Deep breath. All of us take a deep breath. I'll relax, sit comfortably. Good evening. I'm Giard. I'm the artist in residence for the coming 2 months in this space here. Part of this series of exhibitions include 3 lectures. The one I gave last week, which was a presentation of my work. This one is called Interaction Theories, and next week is the third one, which is called Mythologies of Contemporary Art. For those who haven't been introduced, I'm a Montreal artist. I did my bachelor from Peterborough University that I finished about 10 years ago. And since then I've just been working as an artist. I've spent the last 4 years in Europe, in Amsterdam, as part of the State Academy of Fine Arts there. So I've always been very interested in cultural exchange, as well as different ways of eating, different ways of thinking and cultures. Interaction theories. This lecture, the event that I'm busy now is called the Family Show. And the Family Show deals with relationships, with inside the family specifically. It's about communication, or most of all the lack of communication, I would call it. Dysfunctional communication. Interaction theories is about to start. Don't worry about the show. Oh, okay. Okay. Interaction theories has to do with communication, so about talking with each other. My viewpoint, what I'm going to introduce you tonight, is a kind of philosophy of life which I have adopted, or basically something that I find is that communication is much more than just one person talking to another person. I would call it like a medium of life. It is as important as breathing or as eating. Except that in our culture, most of the time you don't know you have something until it's gone, or when it's broken and when you fall over it. So what I want to introduce you about communication is something that in which we are all the time, but because we're in it all the time, we don't see it. We don't notice it. The only place so far where we do notice it is what we call into mental health. Because that's when you have dysfunction. That's when things are falling apart. And that is why this lecture is kind of more or less based into studies into psychiatry and psychology, into studies that have went into what is communication and why is it broken down. To begin, a kind of metaphor I like to use is, if just to start with the whole. So you have a circle, just a simple circle, and then you just kind of, for some reason, just splice a circle, and then you have 2 extremities. And that's, for me, is the duality of life, is that somehow at one point the whole just got broken, and now we're only stuck with these 2 extremities. So we always have this duality in life, and for me the most basic one is what I would call the world out there and the world in me. So basically everything that is I and everything that is not I. So if you imagine the circle, cut it in 2, then you have these 2 hands, the world out there and the world in me. has like the intellectual world, the habit of cutting things apart. So we have already this two thing, and then science keeps cutting it more and more and more and more and more into smaller and smaller pieces, trying to find meaning. And I would see the other way of the world in me, like in the sense of the reunification, so that the power of putting back together. And in a kind of poetic way, that's how I see men and women in the sense of procreation, which is the act of unification, again, to recreate. Except I find that the word procreation makes it sound like a duty, it's for creation. And I find it would be better if it just be recreation, which sounds more fun. Anyway. So if I return to the world out there, how I perceive the world out there, and how I perceive myself inside, sometimes out there we can be aware. So like tonight it's raining, and you have to stop at the street corner because the light is red. Or, well, you have to be polite or nice to people, like your parents and things like that. So sometimes there's things you are aware, sometimes you are not aware out there. And then people will talk about fate or destiny, or God or devil, or they'll just say, well, that's what family do at Christmas. That's the way it is. It's nothing to do with it. And so that's out there. And then there's in here how I view myself. There's also a part of which I am aware, which is basically my name, where I'm born, what shoe size I wear, things like that. And then also the side of which I am not aware. Now, the side that we're not aware, there's a lot of institution ready to tell us about that. So you have religion who gave us a soul, you have government who gave us countries to die for, and you have family who, go ask your mother, go ask your father, and these institutions, these people possess the truth, and if you dare question them, it's like, then they say, well, you're crazy, you're out of your mind, because we possess the truth. And this attitude is one reason why we have so many asylums, because there's this truth out there that they possess, and if we don't fit with them, then, well, we can be dealt with quite easily. So, the world out there, I would classify as the rational, scientific mind. So that's the one who cuts things to pieces. And in here would be like what I would call everything that's not that, so the non-quantifiable realm, or the emotional realm. It's very difficult to talk about what's that other half, this emotional or the one you can't measure, because for the last 4 or 5 centuries, we've been, all the words and all the concepts we have in our dictionary have been made to define and to cut everything apart. So not only we have a problem with having the concept, even if we had a concept, we wouldn't have the words to try to externalize it, because we've been living in this scientific world. It's the same idea that, for example, like sometimes somewhere in history it's been decided we have 5 senses, which I find is a joke, because I guess it's quite easy to say we have 5, because we see, we hear, we smell, we taste, and we touch. But that's for me is like the pure Toma story in the Bible. Only believe what you can experience. So, but because somewhere in history it's been decided there's only 5, any other event that happens don't make sense. They're not allowed to exist. So for me there's 1 to 5, and then there's 6 to 10. But 6 to 10 we don't know what it is yet. But it's like if you have red glasses, you won't see the red objects. So by the sense that we have decided somewhere in history that we have 5 senses, in a way we're disqualifying any other type of experience. I like this story about Albert Einstein when he was working on the theory of relativity. was working and was writing it down, and for him it was just working, but in himself says, yeah, but this doesn't make any sense, it goes totally against our common sense. And then he said, well, then common sense must be wrong, because it made sense for him. So this kind of duality or complementarity is not something new that I invented. It's like, if you look at the yin-yang and Eastern philosophy, this philosophy of duality that's been there for a very long time. So it's like the irrational going to the emotional. So why do I bring these two, like, so important for me, these two, the irrational and the emotional sides? Why do I see them so clearly? Well, if I look how society, in a sense, has progressed over the centuries, the rational has been very good. We are running water, science against diseases. We went to send man to the moon. I mean, there's a lot of technical progress, but at the same time, we have all the pollution and we have all the mutually assured destruction. So that side hasn't fared very good. But then on the emotional side, we have the Charter of Rights, which is good. Amnesty International, these people who are working to protect children and things like that. So there's also been progress on that side. But still, you still have religious wars, and you still have a lot of abuse around. So it still hasn't been the solution. So scientific, it's like the rational scientific mind has tried to find meaning through the material world, and it hasn't really succeeded over the centuries. And the emotional one, like through the religion and the philosophers, they really try to think about it, but they still don't know about it. So both sides, they want to do it their way, but there still hasn't come to any better understanding. So for me, what we're at this point is that actually it's neither one or the other, but it's actually both at the same time. It's actually the relationship between the material and the non-material, which for me gives meaning and which is meaning. An example I can give about this, what I mean by relationship between material and immaterial, is like a man walking on a tightrope, on a circus hat, a big pole, that if he was to stand immobile with this pole, he would fall to the ground. And if he would be on the wire, would move in all directions without any control, he would also fall to the ground. So the only reason why he's able to stay there is because of the motion between static and movement. So it's neither one state or the other state. It's both states at the same time, which makes it possible to stay there. Another example is electricity, because electricity actually is a relationship. It's actually not a thing. You cannot say that this particle has this amount of electricity or that particle has this amount of electricity. You can say it has a positive or negative sign, but that's not electricity. Electricity takes the condition between these two things. You take things apart, electricity is gone. In personal relationships, it's the same thing. For me, when you talk about love, you want that potential to create. But you all know what happens in a relationship. One is love, the other one is not. So the relationship between out there, between here and my world, the emotion, for me becomes the more like obvious when things are bad, which is not a state of affair, but I started mattering when the jobs were brought down, thinking about the asylum. And what you saw was the children who were born there, were living in the crib all their life. So, and the crib was just like stacked one beside the other. So they didn't have any movement. And they didn't have people to take care of them. So they were just like these tough bodies, but the legs were just atrophied. And when they would reach maturity, because when everything would die, the next thing would be to send them next to the orphanage or the asylum. Because they were so not able to function, and there was no other thing to do with them. So then the relation between the environment and the person, that's a very obvious thing at that point. But the scientific mentality is one who will come in and you will look for disease. You will look for a gene defect. You will say, well, these people are deformed because there's this gene that's happening there, that alimentation is too advanced. Another example is a prisoner in a jail. I mean, when you see a movie, it's always like the worst thing is the isolation. Don't put them there, or it's like somebody's. So when we look at it in asylums, when you put somebody, close up somebody in a white room, totally alone and cut out from anything else, are we actually helping him, or we're actually torturing him that he gives up? Because he's totally isolated. So this need for communication is not just something, let's say, that we do, but something that's essential for our nature. When you have, for me, things like 1 or 2 years ago in Hudson Montreal, the gunman just went and women, or the Donald in the States, isn't it somebody who needs just to be heard, just to have a contact? So this need for interaction is really so essential, but it's something we never have touched upon. One of the view of the people who are starting interaction, say like we are not the instigator of the communication, but we actually participate in the ongoing process. So we never actually start the conversation. We just kind of join in this thing that we never see there. Or another Gregory Bateson said, we cannot communicate. Which is true, I'm just shutting your mouth and saying, leave me alone. Or I think somebody was there making the door. We don't like to meet. We just like to say, oh, we don't want to talk. He's actually telling us just like it. So communication in that sense, like the back and forth between these two bring together. And that together is more than the sum of the parts, or that the result transcends what was started. Like, for me, if I look at society out there, I always felt that they treat us like we're just individual body parts just floating around and inhabited by your soul. You were like on a food table. And that's all life is all about. I mean, if I just look at tell me so if I go back to out there, the rational against the emotional, the scientific mind, by cutting everything apart, is keeping us away from having the vision of the whole again. It's just going smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, as opposed to trying to bring everything together. But then again, I find emotional. These are the guys like religion and philosophy. I find most of the time are telling us to keep away from that. Reality is something earthly, something of duty, something we must do, or just something we must avoid. I find what I these people that seem to be more busy with us after our death than while we're living. And that for me is what I call having lost contact with reality. So having these two, that for me communication is like a bridge, is the junction between the out and the in. So meaning that for me, or the sense meaning, can be described as the dynamics, the interaction between the out and the in, between the matter and the immaterial. One consequence of that, thinking like that, is meaning coming from interaction, is that one thing we have to give up is to say that, calling things for what they are. And one place where this is obvious is in art, because there's this big discourse about is this art and is this not art. But that's not the point, because there's nothing out there that exists outside of a relationship. So the meaning doesn't come from, it's not possessed. It's not like if I put this in a grinder, then I look around and then I find the meaning of this thing. But that's a bit the attitude that we have. And that's the same thing with schizophrenia or mental disease. Because it's much easier to say this person has this disease and it has nothing to do with it. It's totally outside of me. So then meaning is then stopping to put everything in little separate boxes, but trying to have a vision of the whole, trying a vision of relationship. And in that sense, some of the one philosopher who I came across was Wittgenstein, who said the meaning is the use, which I find very straight to the point. Or Gregory Bateson again, who said anything should be defined not by what it is in itself, but by its relation to other things. So, why, so the field that they started to study that, who started to look into interaction and communication, are basically two fields. One is anthropology, because since we start to notice that something is there either when it's gone or when it's wrong. Anthropology, because the culture is different, they've noticed it's different. It's gone. It's not the same. But in psychiatry, we say it's wrong. In a way, it would be so interesting in psychiatry, we would say it's just gone. It's just a different way of behavior. Like anthropology will accept another culture. But we've decided that mental illness is as went wrong. In the 50s, Gregory Bateson, he used to work with Margaret May when she was married to her. And they went together in the 20s, 30s, 40s in Asia, Thailand. So they did a lot of groundbreaking work in anthropology. Bateson later on, by himself, started to expand his field outside anthropology to other sciences. So to actually reach out and to look more as a whole. And one of his one publication was with the Giard, and the book called Communication, Social Math and Psychiatry, in which there's this quote that identity is not independent of the social matrix in which a person operates. It is usually defined by the culture in which a person lives. So that even you're getting closer to say that even your own personal identity is actually socially, culturally defined. There's again breaking up this thing that the things have everything like they're it. So it's not like even your identity is actually socially defined. Paul Watzlawick, who works in California, worked there, gives the example, let's say, of a man who's brought unconscious in a hospital ward. Nobody knows where he comes from, and he's just there. And nobody can figure out what is wrong with him. And he's just totally passed out. So he's walking his test and they didn't find him. Until later, somebody comes and says, well, this guy was under sea. He just went out very fast. So he just had this pressure difference, which made him pass out. So, but they didn't know that. So basically, like what he says, that the failure to realize the relationship between an advance and the context in which it happens, takes place, confronts the viewer with something mysterious, so they didn't understand what was wrong with him, or induced him to attribute to his object of study certain properties the object may not possess. So basically, because you don't know the context, you want to find meaning or something, then you just, there's a big danger that you will advance and you will give theories to the same because you don't understand the social context in which you belong. The step that they make basically from outside, instead of studying the person as a monad, as one unique closed-in thing, they say, why is this person behaving in this bizarre, irrational manner? We ask, in what human context would this behavior be the best possible? Perhaps the only possible one. So instead of looking at the person who is pleased, say, why don't we try to think that actually this guy makes sense, except it's the wrong context? So let's try to figure out what he fits. So it's like being in an opera house and this guy walking up and down selling peanuts to people. We all know things that in the baseball, so we just know the guy can do the play. And that's how the schizophrenic such that is not dimensional communication habits or these so that where? Trying to look at the relationship. That's how we get first step. That's the first step. So another step that the environment set up for people doing things and their environment. So there's another set of relationships that we have. And in the term of personal relationships, so beyond the person and his environment, the person is relation, the people who basically every relationship implies a definition of self by others and good by self. So that basically how you act in front of the other person in a way relates to how you see the other person seeing you, and how you want the other person to see you. Right? This was with Ronald D, who was a kind of pioneer in family therapy, where you basically bring the whole family together. And this books are very interesting to read because basically there's what they call identified patient, the person who suffers from the schizophrenic symptom, the context, our environment. And then you see how this person acts when she's alone, and when the father and the mother is present, or when the brother is present. So, and then each time different things that come up to the surface, so there's different types of relationships. It's the same thing for me in my life when I say, well, here I am giving attention now, but this is more me now than when I am alone, and things like that, or when I am my parents playing with me, or when I'm playing for 2 hours. I mean, I will have always different personalities, but I'm sure I won't be the same talking to my teacher, partner, talking to best friend, or talking to, that I hate the person at work. And what if so, which one is the real me? And actually, there is no real me. The idea is to look for a really one person. And again, this idea that everything is unique, everything is touch. Instead of looking at the relationship, looking for meaning in the relationship itself. In regards to family, Laing suggests family romance is a dream of changing the other to define itself, so that the identity of the self can be self-defined by a definition of the other. So basically, by trying to change people in your family, you're trying to build up this image of what you think you are in relation to them. But in regards to that, the behavior of every individual in the family is related to and dependent on the behavior of others. All behavior is communication, and therefore influences and is influenced by others. So we see that not only the context will influence us where we live, training around, who we are surrounded by, but also the communication, the actual talking, the actual interaction. One important factor here is that in this society, like we're talking about the 5 senses, we use language, spoken word, as the main system of communication. So, on another planet, another way people will talk to communicate, they will have problems with their tongues. We have problems with our mouths. Because language, or whatever symbolized language, is our primary tool of communication. If one day we ever get to telepathy, that will be another problem. Because as long as we use language, we don't want to talk against the non-talk. So we actually set up a law where people cannot break it by talking to themselves. Telepathy will be another thing. So therefore, language becomes part of the language of relationship. That put all of us together. So language is the state of relationship. Language, relationship, each communication. That determines the nature of the relationship. There is a response with the definition of the relationship. Want to be like yes. If you want to be something, you know. This function of that right. Our communication behavior has to be making with other human beings. We call this the relationship between functions. So that's why we have a prisoner who belongs to God, like I've done research in sequence. Gregory Bateson actually goes further, and he just communication rather than the form, and then one from the form as the information, meaning, and the command is praised not to be active. Then, if you look at the technical report of the command, then we're going to do that more. Have to get the report, and then you have to command. And where this dual function becomes very complicated, it is becomes very important. So basically, what you call the waiting for the bus is somebody makes a taxi when you want to talk about food. And you're trying to get it. You want to call it or when people are nervous, or family is just like never. Because there has to be something going on all the time. And another example is that your mother is currently hard driving life. Our careful are there. Or she's doing not careful, but not always crazy. It's rather like supposing that when you have this contemplation is like being punished for your imperfection. So, for example, abstract thought would be love, and then if you have to accept, and then if you let's say, well, get a commitment love to how they can be like I hear what you say out loud, you don't mean writing it. I hear what you say out loud, I know that it's oh, yeah, that's what you say, but I don't know, I know. That's not really what you say. When you speak in words, it's still different than what you feel, because you're just feeling inside of it. Superimposed, so this is do what I say, but not what I hate something, understand. And do everything being there. Don't cheat what you must get. And what that has also, and then you can talk to about your identity, about yourself, all of the reality of you and the source. So anytime something concerns yourself, you need to get that there's actually no room for you to do that. Basically, that's, if you don't Laing in the group therapy Paris, speaking to children and children, came up with this kind of this. So, here, say the discussion, say one parent, child, the parent was the judge, was thinking of what she really what she really got. Of what was for total good, of what was preservation for the egg, of what was nothing. Or the parent would decide what the patient would say, well, she doesn't really mean what she said. She is saying this because she did so. She cannot remember or know what she feels. She's not just violent, right? Saying that this lives conceptually how you negate nothing. And he has himself with wisdom. As a result, she could not tell all of the things more completely. She could not have present self-reflection of her relation to herself. All there, each other, from the world. There was no place to stand up. You have to work with people and the relationship with the girl and the lady. Putting their attention on the interaction, basically a certain amount, the person that has allowed to express one was not allowed to express and was not allowed to express the awareness. So, it is not surprising that the person who practices the time can only resort to himself to be this way. The last chance which is thought in this regard is the interaction very great trying to resolve finding these connections out of the children. It's basically, we say, make a circle and bring them together. There is no one out there that will be there. You will need to look in the past. But only in the present. Once there is a problem, looking at the basically, you look at how the position is now. Look at the motion, movement, reaction, the system gives other declaration, traffic, the rule, imitation, observe, and way interaction, which can account for both self-information and change the here and now situation. So they basically look how to there is carbon effect. I no longer have because it's defined by the nature of the system. So the interaction theory went further than the now category of joining the two ends together, looking at the whole. In a way, as a kind of overall joining like to leave it all which is very close to the heart, but close to the heart. I think it's the joining. The use of making localization comes from the power. Words like those are used for this. I don't know. Want to launch it? We can